February 12th, 2008. Going off on a Sega tangent, while the Sega Master System reigned supreme outside of North America for many years, its last game here was the 8-bit version of Sonic the Hedgehog, released on October 25th, 1991. Outside of North America, however, the final game was Mickey's Ultimate Challenge in '98. The Saturn's was Magic Knight Rayearth on December 11th, 1998, and the Dreamcast was NHL 2K2 on February 14th, 2002, with the Japanese final release being Karos on March 8th, 2007. The old Game Gear's final release here in North America was The Lost World Jurassic Park in August of '97. Both the PlayStation and PlayStation 2 were lucky enough to get soccer games as their last releases, with FIFA Soccer 2005 released on October 12, 2004 for the PS1, and Pro Evolution Soccer 2014 released on November 8, 2013 for the PS2. Also, the original Xbox's last release was Madden 09 on August 12, 2008. How fun! It was just 1 year off from being worth a damn. Welcome to Atari Minute. Today we're bumbling past the last games that were released on Atari consoles. Klax on the 2600, 1990. Gremlins on the 5200, 1986. Sentinel on the 7800, 1991. Europe only. North American last game is hard to find. Want to hear a joke? The Gizmondo. This is an obscure console released on October 22nd, 2005 here in North America. It had a lot packed into it for a handheld at the time, a GPS, a camera, and an uproarious amount of ads. Yeah, there were two versions, one cheapo variant for a swift $230 that came caked with advertisements, and one with no ads for a reasonable $400. Also, the device had ties to the Swedish Mafia. With executives linked with such a ragtag group and a laughable lineup of games and price points, the Gizmondo flopped so hard here in North America that its launch titles double as its final titles. Now in Europe, the releases were much more spread out, but in North America, yeah, October 22nd, nothing really got past that date.
It's always interesting / incredibly anticlimactic to see just how a console ends, but we still have yet to see what the final game for my favorite console, the GameCube, was. The Prophecy. Hey y'all, Scott here, and brace yourselves because I have natural selections of bitch, isn't it?
Competition has been a key aspect of gaming since the very beginning, so it's no surprise that early on video game competition events were way a thing. Early examples include Atari's Sword Quest competitions and the organization Twin Galaxies keeping records of gaming high scores as early as 1981. But one of the most iconic is definitely the Nintendo World Championships 1990. This competition is legendary for its ties to pop culture and the value of its memorabilia, but many may not know of Nintendo's other competitive events held afterwards. So today we'll be taking a look back at not only the Nintendo World Championships, but Nintendo's other big competitions that followed. Now, none of the game cartridges that were used in these competitions have been officially re-released via digital stores, so the only way we can play them nowadays is through Jesus! Or through unofficial reproduction cards. These were created by Retro USB, and these things rock. They're incredibly well made and come with instruction manuals with a hearty dose of information not only relating to the games, but the competitions as well. Keep in mind though, if you're interested in picking these up, some newer aftermarket NES and SNES consoles may have trouble reading repro cards. In 1990, Nintendo wanted to absolutely rock the world with the greatest gaming event out there, the Nintendo World Championships. Nintendo wanted to go all out with this thing. They hired the same group who worked on the opening ceremonies for the Olympics to set up the competition arena, for God's sake. They wanted this thing to be huge. The competition was mainly inspired by the 1989 movie The Wizard, which was a butterball of a family movie focused on a little boy named Jimmy. He had PTSD after the tragic death of his sister, however he had some insane skills at NES games. And fast forwarding 80 minutes, we'll show you Jimmy competing in Video Armageddon, a video game competition that actually unveiled Super Mario Bros. 3 to North America. For some reason, Jimmy knew the secret to achieving the warp whistle, but hey, I'm not gonna read too much into it. What am I, one of those fabled virgins I'm always hearing about? The Nintendo World Championships was inspired by the event in the movie and definitely took a few key ideas from it, such as the finals taking place at Universal Studios. The competition started on March 8, 1990, as Nintendo went on a cross-country road trip setting shop up in various different cities for players to compete for a chance to become a finalist. The event was organized by 3 different areas: the competition arena, the Power Walk, and the Super Stage, with players being grouped by under 11, 12 to 17, and 18 and over. The competition arena housed 102 stations with the Nintendo World Championships game cartridge playable. Players would play to achieve the highest score, and those who succeeded the most would move on. The Power Walk housed 120 game stations that were filled to the brim with new and upcoming Nintendo games ripe for the playing. And the Super Stage was live entertainment on repeat, including music, game tips, game previews, and more. The big finale of the event took place on December 7th through the 9th in 1990 at Universal Studios. There was no definitive winner of the championships, just 3 winners from each age group, that being Jeff Hansen for 11 and under, Thor Ackerland for 12 to 17, and Robert Whitman for 18 and over. Thor Ackerland is basically Darwinism with thumbs because he won the most out of everybody, scoring over an insane 2,800,000 points. Other contestants would receive all different kinds of prizes such as NWC merch and scholarship money, while the 3 top winners went home with a 1990 Geo Metro, 40-inch television, Gold Mario Trophy, a $10,000 savings bond, and the only one we give a piss about to this day, the cartridge. 90 finalists were given the Nintendo World Championships 1990 game cartridge, which is what the entirety of this competition surrounded. This cartridge features 3 games, Super Mario Bros., Rad Racer, and Tetris. Dip switches on the outside change up the time limit for the competition, but the standard time limit used in the championships was 6 minutes 21 seconds. To start up, you have to press start on the second controller, and you're flung into Super Mario Bros., where you have to collect 50 coins as quickly as possible. Once the 50th coin is achieved, you're flung into Rad Racer, where you simply have to finish the race. And then the final game, Tetris, where you just have to rack up as many points as possible. There's loads of stress that can go into this, but the player has to keep in mind the score multipliers. Mario is multiplied by 1, Rad Racer by 10, and Tetris by 25. So you really want to get through Mario and Rad Racer as quickly as possible to get to Tetris. This cartridge is considered the holy grail of gaming. There are 2 variants out there, one in a gray cartridge that was used in competitions and were given to finalists, and the gold cartridge a la The Legend of Zelda that was given out as a special Nintendo Power giveaway. The gray cartridge is limited to 90 copies, while the gold cartridge is limited to 26. While other games are definitely much more rare, even other Nintendo competition cartridges, the Nintendo World Championships 1990 cartridge is just obtainable enough that it makes it more iconic and desirable to most. Now that's of course in comparison to something like the Nintendo Campus Challenge 1991 cartridge, where only one of them exists. I mean, sorry, but none of us are really gonna ever own that. With just over 100 copies of the cartridge in existence, it makes NWC 1990 a pipe dream, but definitely a possibility in a game collection. A mere 1 year after the Nintendo World Championships, Nintendo came back with yet another competition, albeit a bit smaller than the World Championships. The Nintendo Campus Challenge 1991 took place at almost 60 campuses and was mainly targeted at college students. 3 stages similarly to NWC 1990 were utilized here, with one being used for competition and the other 2 for demo stations featuring NES and Game Boy games. The game cartridge used for this is structured almost identically to the Nintendo World Championships 1990 game, with the same intertitle music, graphics, and 6-minute 21-second time limit, but now with different games. Super Mario Bros. 3, Pinbot, and Dr. Mario. Mario 3, collect 25 coins, Pinbot, score 100,000 points, and Dr. Mario, play for the most points. Mario 3 was multiplied by 10, Pinbot by 1, and Dr. Mario by 100. The cartridge is at least a solid 1,500 acres rarer than an NWC cart because there is only one known to be in existence at the moment. However, this event and cartridge don't hold nearly as much value as NWC to most collectors out there. Plus, look at this thing. Yikes. The final winner was Stephen Lucas with a swift 2,394,130 points. The Nintendo Campus Challenge struck again in 1992, this time being the first SNES competition. This was even smaller than Campus Challenge 91, with only 35 college campuses being graced with this thick honkin' cartridge. Campus Challenge 1992 featured Super Mario World, F-Zero, and Pilot Wings. Super Mario World, you had to collect 50 coins, F-Zero, you had to complete 2 laps, and Pilot Wings, you had to land on 2 targets. Super Mario World was multiplied by 1, F-Zero by 100, and Pilot Wings by 10,000. The overall winner of the competition, Jeff Hansen, won a solid $10,000. PowerFest 94 was also coined as the World Championships 2, which made sense. While it wasn't as big as the original, it was still bigger than the campus challenges. PowerFest was held across a slew of cities to find finalists. Players would play on the PowerFest 94 cart, which included the Super Mario All-Stars remake of Super Mario Bros. The Lost Levels, Super Mario Kart, and Ken Griffey Jr. Presents Major League Baseball. In the Lost Levels, the objective was to beat the first level. In Super Mario Kart, it was to finish 5 laps, and Ken Griffey Griffey Jr., was to get as many home runs as possible. Lost levels was multiplied by 1, Mario Kart multiplied your coin total by 1000 and added your finishing position score, and in Ken Griffey Jr. the total distance by 100 and number of home runs by 10,000. A bit too complicated of a scoring system in my opinion. The finals of Power Fest 94 were featured in San Diego and had players split up in teams, being the Cyclones, Hurricanes, Tornadoes, and the Typhoons. When the Tornadoes reigned supreme, the Donkey Kong Country competition cartridge was cracked out to see who would be crowned the true winner, that being Mike LaRossi. Nowadays, there only exist 2 Power Fest cartridges, with the rest being reused for parts by Nintendo. After years of being out of the competition game, Nintendo struck back starting in 2014. NES Remix 2 had a special feature for those who had NES Remix 1 on the Wii U. The Nintendo World Championships Remix was unlocked and was a tribute to both the Nintendo World Championships 1990 and the Nintendo Campus Challenge 1991. Collect 50 coins in Super Mario Bros., collect 25 coins in Super Mario Bros. 3, and rack up the points in Dr. Mario. You could then post your score online via Miiverse. A year later, Nintendo decided to embrace the 25th anniversary of NWC and announced the event's return in 2015. The event basically returned in name only though. The structure was vastly different. Players would go to select Best Buy locations to play the NWC Remix found in Ultimate NES Remix on the Nintendo 3DS. The highest scorers were then contestants in the event alongside some players specifically invited by Nintendo. The event consisted of multiple mystery Nintendo games being played, while the lowest scoring players would be kicked off each round. This included games such as Balloon Fight, The Legend of Zelda, Splatoon, Super Smash Bros. For Wii U, Mario Kart 8, and Blast Ball, which was announced at the event and later turned out to be Metroid Prime Federation Force, and everybody at piss. The final game was the then unreleased Super Mario Maker, where the contestants had to make their way through Nintendo employee-made levels. John Numbers ended up reigning supreme and was awarded a trophy and an autographed employee-made levels. John Numbers ended up reigning supreme and was awarded a trophy and an autographed new 3DS XL. Taking a year off, Nintendo brought the Nintendo World Championships back once again in 2017, solidifying it as more than just a one-time thing. The structure was very similar to that of 2015's show, but now with a greater variety of games, with everything from ARMS to Bird and Beans to Mario Party 2. I gotta say, I enjoyed the weirder, more obscure games in the event much more than the more competitive ones. I mean, it's not every day you see a competitive run of Super Mario Bros. Deluxe's multiplayer. The final game was predictably Super Mario Odyssey. While 2015's winner John Numbers made it to the final round, it was Thomas G who ended up winning this year's event.
The Nintendo World Championships and all the other events are wicked cool pockets of Nintendo and gaming history, but enough about that. Let's see how my NWC 1990 score compares to that of Thor Ackerland's. Wow, leave it to Nintendo to out me as a giant fucking pussy. Scott here. If we're going to be talking about the Wii, we might as well get this out of the way. The Wii is one of the most polarizing game consoles ever released. Many say it was nothing more than just a virtual bowling dust collector, and while that may be true, I personally believe that while it was very flawed, the Wii was also heavily underrated.
Ah, the Nintendo Wii, everybody's least favorite console. I say that because while everybody likes a hearty dose of piss on the
Oi, come back here, you dusty old cunt.
Language. Can of beans in a Tesco bag. Take the head for
Oi, come back here, you dusty old cunt.
language. Can of beans in a Tesco bag. Take the head from his body like a Lego man. I'm the governor. I'm the big Lebowski. Big fuck.
Never put away this tweeting. This is live on Facebook. This is live. Thames Valley Police, yeah? Thames Valley Police. Don't touch me, fam. Don't touch me.
One thing's for sure, and two things for certain. When it gets made, the pegs.
This console at all times. Let's be honest, everybody's had a superb experience one time or another on this thing. People like to dog on this poor guy for a multitude of reasons, many being totally warranted. The Wii was completely underpowered compared to its competition, the PS3 and Xbox 360. It was basically just another GameCube. The Wii was home to 90% shovelware, just games that were hot trash that stained clearance bins for ages. The Wii's online blew. The Wii's motion controls were Gimmick Fest 2006. I mean, these are all definite problems, but I really like the Wii. It isn't my favorite Nintendo console, but it did a lot right. The design of this bad boy is stellar. The Wii is one of the nicest looking game consoles out there. It's incredibly small, compact, and it was so solid they had to include a stand with every purchase just to give the thing that much more class. The disc slot would illuminate a blue light whenever an update for the system was available, which was tart and annoying, but it's totally forgiven for a little thing around the block known as GameCube backwards compatibility. And that was, in my opinion, one of the Wii's greatest strengths. It was totally the all-in-one Nintendo box. You had access to the entire Wii and GameCube libraries, and in addition to that, every other Nintendo home console, other systems, and smaller downloadable Wii games via the Wii Shop channel. The Wii was the introduction to the Virtual Console brand, which were just older games now available on a digital storefront. But let's not forget another third of what was available on the Wii Shop channel WiiWare, which was the brand used to describe downloadable smaller Wii games. WiiWare was definitely a hodgepodge of quality, but there were some pretty great WiiWare games out there back in the day. Dr. Mario Online RX, Fluidity, Mega Man 9 and 10, Excite Bike World Rally, World of Goo, and so on. And then we have the channels. You see, the Wii was the first Nintendo home console with a mandatory system menu. Yeah, the GameCube had this thing of a system menu going on, but the Wii menu was mandatory to peruse to get anywhere. Different applications were considered channels, which were either preloaded on the system or downloadable via the shop channel, and man, did the Wii ever have channels. The disc channel was always a mainstay in the family, a great crowd pleaser, but once you were all out of games to play, where better to lurk than the Mii channel? Making your own custom avatars was never as simple and fun as making Mii's was. It was just entertaining to see how out of this world you could make a Mii look or how close you can make it to look to another person. But man, was I ever into the photo channel. This channel is barely talked about to this day, and that angers me more than anything photo channel related should. The Wii came with an SD card slot, which meant you could take photos from it and display them on the big screen, and also let you go wild with some effects. When you wanted to become an elite member of the Economic Stimulation Squad, the Wii Shop channel was always there, and of course, who could forget the forecast and news channels? Just channels to keep you up to date with the latest news and weather forecasts, but if you wanted to stay up to date with Nintendo games, then you had to download the Nintendo channel, which I spent way too much time on as a kid. Video-wise, it had nothing but trailers for Wii and DS games, other than a weekly show entitled Nintendo Week. But it also included downloadable demos for Nintendo DS games you could play by wirelessly connecting your DS to the Wii. The internet channel was the way to watch YouTube channels on your TV back in 2008, and I would talk about the Everybody Votes channel, but I don't want to get into politics. The Check Me Out channel allowed you to upload your craziest Mii creations and compete in Mii-related character creation contests. Most of these channels have been discontinued by Nintendo. The only ones really usable these days are the Disc Me, Photo, and Wii Shop channel, and even the Wii Shop channel will be discontinued in early 2019. I liked dabbling in the Wii message board, which allowed you to send messages to friends, which I never used because the Wii's online infrastructure was gross. I mainly used it to track my playtime of games. No more consoles do this. I love knowing how fucking useless I was being some days by seeing just how much Mario Galaxy I was playing. Speaking of the Wii's online, obviously one of the console's biggest turnoffs. It just seemed like for everything the Xbox 360 and PlayStation 3 did right with online multiplayer and gaming, the Wii was just vomiting profusely at the thought of the internet. Some games worked really well, like Mario Kart Wii and GoldenEye 007. Yeah, that's all I got. What most people point at was the performance of Super Smash Bros. Brawl Online, as it blew hard. The majority of other titles worked okay, but their performance was a far cry from Nintendo's competitors at the time. Oh yeah, and the Wii's controller was this honkin' thing, the Wii Remote, or sometimes referred to as the Wiimote. Either people hate this thing or can tolerate it. I can definitely tolerate it. The Wii Remote was actually really simple when you got down to it. Basically an accelerometer and an IR sensor gave this thing the magic that was required for Wii Sports Bowling. The motion controls work well most of the time, it just depends on the game, in which problems can be attributed to bad programming a lot of the time. Of course, this design is a bit on the simple side for games released in the late 2000s, early 2010s, so plug in a nunchuck for more advanced control options because, gasp, is that an analog stick? Not enough? Well, you can always pop this bad boy into a wheel or a gun shell for an extra hearty dose of unnecessary. But of course you could pop this nugget onto the bottom of the controller to make the Wii Remote do what Nintendo said it could do at the very start. The Wii Motion Plus came out in correlation with Wii Sports Resort and added a gyroscope into the mix which allowed for more precise motion control. This was later fully built into new Wii Remotes named Wii Remote Plus. But hey, if you're like way into not using the Wii Remote, the Classic Controller and Classic Controller Pro sufficed as solid ways to play compatible games with more standard controllers. And if you wanted to use anything but your hands to control a game, the Wii Balance Board supported a few other games other than just Wii Fit. I'm fine using the Wii Remote, but it is nowhere near my favorite controller. Its versatility is neat, how they designed so many ways to play games with it, but overall, there are definitely other controllers I'd rather play games with. Speaking of which, on to the games, which is what I think makes the Wii so underrated. There were so many great first-party Nintendo games released on this thing, it was nuts. And it had a good amount of solid third-party games, plus some hidden gems. It definitely wasn't up to snuff with the GameCube's library in my opinion, but comparing it to say the Wii U or Nintendo 64, the Wii definitely brought the goods in the form of quality Nintendo exclusives. The launch of the system on November 19th, 2006 brought us Wii Sports, The Legend of Zelda Twilight Princess, and Excite Truck. Wii Sports, I gotta say, is one of the most important games of all time. You can scoff as much as you want, but you gotta stop at some point and admit, Wii Sports was a really fun game, and it brought so many people together. As a pack-in, there was a lot of replayability here, and while the motion controls were definitely still a bit primitive and in their early stages, they worked well enough that it made it consistently a hoot to play. But of course, if you weren't into that, you got Twilight Princess at launch, one of the most hyped up Zelda games of all time. Regardless of your opinion on Twilight Princess, having a Zelda game at launch is surely a plus. And Excite Truck, an odd bugger to round the 3 Nintendo launch titles out, but still a really solid game for the system. The Wii series of games were always a mainstay on the console. These were mostly fun games that really took advantage of the controller's capabilities. Not the system's capabilities, good god no, these games look like they were designed with 4 tubs of Play-Doh and nothing more. Wii Sports Resort, Wii Party, Wii Play, all have loads of fun to be had in them. But of course, there's also Mario Galaxy and Mario Galaxy 2 are excellent in the form of 2 discs. I said it before and I'll say it again, I plan to talk about these games at length soon, but for the time being, good job Nintendo. But if you wanted some 2D Mario action, Nintendo made a new 2D Mario game on a home console for the first time in decades, New Super Mario Bros. Wii. Yeah, the art style is bland and it doesn't feel as magical as playing Super Mario Bros. 3 or Super Mario World for the first time, but the new Super Mario Bros. Series is like comfort food. The Wii entry is a solid game and one of the better in the new Super series. It also introduced simultaneous Mario multiplayer, but that was a mistake. Donkey Kong Country came swinging back courtesy of Retro Studios with Donkey Kong Country Returns, and what a game. I'm not a fan of the motion controls being used in this game, so I would personally recommend the 3DS version, but still, DKC Returns is fantastic. Kirby made a comeback on the Wii as well. While the series remained pretty consistent on handhelds, Kirby's Epic Yarn in 2010 was the first Kirby home console game since Kirby Air Ride on the GameCube in 2003. And that was a racing game. If we're talking platformers, it was since Kirby 64 in 2000. And Epic Yarn was pretty neat, man. And yeah, it doesn't have a lot of the tropes of standard Kirby games, but it's so pleasant to look at. It's just a fun game to relax and take your time through. Kinda like most Kirby games. If you wanted some standard Kirby action just a year later in 2011, Return to Dreamland pummeled onto shelves and hey, it's a standard Kirby game. A bit too generic Kirby for me personally, but I still enjoyed the game. And a year after that, Nintendo's final release on the Wii, Kirby's Dream Collection, commemorating the 20th anniversary of the franchise. A really great compilation, featuring for the most part the first half of Kirby's platformer history. What wasn't a really great compilation was Nintendo's offering during the 25th anniversary of Super Mario Bros. Nintendo re-released Super Mario All-Stars on the Super Nintendo on a Wii disc for $30, and included some extras like a history booklet and soundtrack CD. The game is just a ROM dump of the SNES original, a compilation remake of Mario 1, 2, 3, and the Lost Levels. Not one of Nintendo's greatest efforts, definitely. And speaking of Nintendo being lazy as piss, New Play Control! This was a series of games re-released that were simply GameCube games, now with motion controls in them, maybe with a few extra additions here and there. Some games like Pikmin 1 and 2 are blissful with motion and pointer controls, while Mario Power Tennis just feels tacked on. I don't know, sometimes I really like what New Play Control brought to the table, but other times it's like, I can already play GameCube games on the Wii. Re-releasing these things don't really do too much in terms of the concept of making sense. 2 Zelda games and 2 Metroid games. What a world we lived in. With Twilight Princess coming at launch and also being available on the GameCube, Wii owners would have to wait 5 years for a Zelda game made from scratch for the Wii, and Skyward Sword ahoy! Definitely not one of the most beloved Zelda games at the moment due to its over-reliance on linearity, motion controls, and hand-holding. But watch in 5 years, people will consider it the best Zelda game. Metroid got a fair amount of love on the Wii, with Metroid Prime 3 Corruption coming in 2007, the Metroid Prime trilogy containing the first 3 Prime games with Wii remote controls, and Other M is considered one of the worst Metroid games, but I haven't played it, so let's just avoid this conversation entirely. Smash Bros. And Mario Kart, the 2 heaviest hitters of a Nintendo console these days. Mario Kart Wii was never one of my favorites, but hey, it's still a really solid Mario Kart. And Smash Bros. Brawl, my god, I will defend this game till the cows come home. Is it a great competitive game? No, it's too slow and has too many random elements like tripping and an unbalanced character roster. But it's a good, decent, great, solid game, man. Like, it has so much in it. It has such an amazing character roster. It had a Wikipedia article detailing every Nintendo game released just for funsies. I really love Brawl as a game. I think it gets a bad rap for its lack of competitive nature, but man, I still think it's a really, really solid game. Punch-Out, dude. Punch-Out on the Wii is phenomenal. A bit too over-reliant on nostalgia, but still crazy fun and a great game. Now, of course, Nintendo had loads of other games on this thing. The Return of Sin and Punishment, Xenoblade Chronicles, Fire Emblem Radiant Dawn, Animal Crossing City Folk, Battalion Wars 2, WarioWare Smooth Moves and Wario Land Shake It, Big Brain Academy, Mario Strikers Charge, Mario Super Sluggers, effin' Excitebots. But still, there were notable missing franchises on the Wii. F-Zero, Star Fox, the other Mario sports games, Yoshi. Hey, some third-party offerings definitely made the gaps a little less wide with releases like Klonoa, Tatsunoko vs. Capcom, Mad World. Sonic Colors was one of the better modern Sonic titles. Also, the Wii was the first time we saw Mario and Sonic team up. What a whirlwind and a half. No More Heroes gained quite the cult following. Light Gun Games finally had a system to call their own. GoldenEye 007 is a crazy fun first-person shooter. Third parties didn't sleep on the Wii. But of course I'm leaving out a solid 9/10 of the Wii's library, which is this stuff. Yeah, the Wii was filled with shovelware, had less than stellar specs, with some pissy online, motion controls, and missing Nintendo franchises on it. But the Nintendo games that did appear on it were mostly pretty great, and man, there are some third-party offerings that definitely rock. The Virtual Console was awesome on the Wii, feeling much more fleshed out and thoughtful than forthcoming Nintendo consoles' legacy content offerings. It ain't perfect, but I think many should definitely look more at the positives with the Wii, as they will definitely find something they'd like. It's an underrated console that, while flawed, delivered a lot more than you may recall.
The Wii isn't a perfect system, but it shouldn't be chastised for popularizing motion control. Rather, it should be celebrated for its amazing first-party lineup, interesting concepts, and great hidden gems, is what I would say if I was fucking asinine. Do you really think I'd be in support of Virgin McGames console over here? Please, I'm operating on a strict anti-Virgin policy. Hey y'all, Scott here, and happy Independence. I would have said day, but I'm such a busy guy, so much so that I'm making my jack-o'-lanterns now so I don't have to in October. Pumpkins are hard to come by this time of year. Welcome, welcome, welcome. And did you hear that? Either I'm in a really shitty neighborhood or it's Halloween. I can't tell you how excited I am for the season. I recently ate an entire fucking pumpkin in preparation, and I must say I'm definitely more pumpkin than man at this point. And I also followed the simple 9-step plan to affirm that I'm going to rake in the most possible trick-or-treaters this year. It's absolutely foolproof. I'm going to be having kids camping outside my... It's absolutely foolproof. I'm going to be having kids camping outside my house for the midnight release of this whole Halloween thing. Anyways, Halloween is a thing. So it's time for some spooks and scares to give us some jeeps and creeps. Let's talk about a game that is the cornucopia of brainwashing and suicidal thoughts. Yep, everybody's favorite, Polybius. Now you may be saying, Scott, so many other people have talked about Polybius. Have you truly run out of ideas? Well, yeah, just don't say it like that. So grab your New Year's 3-month-old rotten watermelon and lend an ear. On with the spook.
1981, back when arcades were an absolute humdinger. They were prime hangout spots for kids, even though they weren't the most ideal place in parents' eyes. As video games became increasingly more and more popular, many questioned if they had any negative effects on the players, whether that be migraines or behavior alteration. The US government noticed how video games could entrance a player and wanted to test something. They've already dabbled in this industry, as Atari built a specialized version of the game Battlezone as a training tool for soldiers. But this time, the government wanted to try something a bit more racy. They wanted to make a game that would addict and brainwash its players. This game was Polybius. Released only in Portland, Oregon for a short period of time, the unmarked black arcade cabinet would draw lines thicker than any other, with players absolutely entranced by the game. The game supposedly utilized vector graphics, which make for clean, smooth lines. The gameplay of Polybius has been debated to death, however most have agreed Polybius is very similar to that of Tempest by Atari, released around the same time. The difference is, Polybius snuck in various subliminal messages in the game, which would flash at the player spontaneously. These messages, along with the addictive nature of the game, tormented players. The game reportedly caused many to suffer from sickness, nightmares, seizures, suicidal thoughts, and even death. After these incidents started happening, the game was quickly pulled from the arcade, never to be seen from again. I don't know, man. Polybius is one of the largest urban legends in all of gaming. Many aspects of the story make sense, but when analyzed, it all starts to kind of fall apart. The earliest known mention of the game was in 1998 when an entry for an arcade game entitled Polybius was found on coinop.org, where early tidbits of the legend were revealed there, commenting on the rumors floating around about the cabinet and how obscure it is. In 2006, a user by the name of Stephen Roach made a comment on the coinop entry stating he was an employee for the company Sinneslosion, the makers of Polybius. Sinneslosion is a fake German word that is a couple of words mashed together, roughly translating to sensory deprivation. According to Roach, the company was contracted by a South American business, and he stated that he and his colleagues didn't know their own strength when it came to coding, as they weren't aware of the effects it would have on players. Coinop came back and stated that Roach's statement was false, but I mean, we're talking Polybius here, who really has the right to say what's true and what's false? The concept of a video game harming the minds of impressionable youth is nothing new. One of the first video game controversies surrounded the game Death Race in 1976, where it looked and sounded as if you were driving over people, while in reality you were driving over gremlins. This led to many asking if video games could inspire players to commit heinous acts in real life. Controversy revolving around a game's effect on a player has basically been around since the very beginning, so it makes sense that an urban legend surrounding a game negatively affecting the mind around this time period would exist. Various games were made to recreate the legend, however none specifically have any mind-altering effects. There have been numerous PC and Flash games based off of Polybius. Looking up the name on YouTube shows us multiple supposed gameplay videos of the game, but the vast majority of these were technologically impossible by 1981 standards. An Atari 2600 homebrew was created and sold exclusively at the Portland Retro Gaming Expo. This actually had subliminal messages in it, well, as subliminal as you can get on a 2600 game. Most recently, a PlayStation 4 game that supports VR came out under the name Polybius. This was inspired by the legend, but it's primarily its own thing. The majority of these recreations and inspirations are shooters, which fall in line with the rumor of the game being similar to Tempest. But no matter how plausible you believe the legend of Polybius is, you have to admit there are loads of things that just don't add up. Why was the first mention of this thing in the late 90s? No records of Polybius exist anywhere prior to this. Why wouldn't any news organizations report on such a thing? A popular video game resulting in illness? Come on, you know the news would be thumping its foot at the thought of that story. Were arcade games really advanced enough to flash mind-altering subliminal graphics in 1981? Nowadays? Sure, why not? But back then? Nintendo couldn't even design Mario's hair correctly in Donkey Kong the same year. Men in Black would reportedly come in to collect data from the machine and then immediately leave. What would they be collecting? How much people are playing it? More worthwhile data to check would be the effects on players, but the machine couldn't track that. Why would the US government conduct this kind of experiment in such a public area within an entertainment medium that was getting so much media coverage? Why wouldn't they keep this to private experimentation only? Sinneslosion, if you're creating a game that has mind-altering effects on the player, why would you name your company something that translates to exactly that? It's like if you're a serial killer naming your bicycle shop Murder in Ted's Bike Bonanza. Polybius could have possibly been confused with the arcade game Polyplay. The cabinet featured 8 different games, which could explain the confusion of what game Polybius actually is, and was made in Germany, the language the supposed company Sinneslosion comes from. Polybius' name is taken straight from Polybius, a Greek historian who famously stated that historians should not report on something they cannot verify, which, you know, is everything Polybius is. Something that can't be verified.